What's the most significant you just fricked with the wrong person moment you've witnessed or experienced? Stopped in Reno overnight while moving across the country. Had everything I own in a little beater I bought for the trip. All night I'm keeping an eye on the parking lot. There is a cop car in the lot. Sure enough, late that night I see a shady guy slowly walking along the line of parked cars, scoping them out. To my surprise, he decides the cop car is the one he wants to break into. So he takes off his shirt, wraps it around his arm, and starts hitting the window with his forearm. I call the front desk and let them know what's going on. Lady says she's calling the cops. I tell her it's a cop car and ask if there is a cop staying in the hotel. She says she'll check. About 30 seconds later, a very angry man in his boxers thunders out of his room and tackles the dude. He fricked with the wrong person. Worst criminal of all time. Ain't no car window you're gonna break with your forearm. There's at least a dozen other ways to get in that are easier and more obvious. Option 1. Rock. My father recently told me this story about this Ashat who he works with driving trucks for different distributors. They have no smoking area since food productions etc, but this butthole decided to smoke there anyway, putting his butts out in a styrofoam cup. Anyway, after a while his truck was loaded and decided to just throw the cup out the window after getting in his truck when a man walked past and asks him calmly to pick the cup up and put it in the bin. To which this intellectual giant of a driver says, if it's so important why don't you put it in the bin before driving off? Without making much of a reaction he picked it up, walked to the bin, then makes his way back inside. When my father gets back to the main truck depot he sees this driver getting yelled at by his boss. Turns out there was a conference being held with some overseas members of the company and the CEO of which was told to pick up the cup. They instantly barred the driver from the site and all associated sites, and my father's boss had to jump through hoops to not lose the contract renewal. I can't imagine the level of ecstasy that CEO would have felt during the whole situation knowing that this prick doesn't know who he is. When I was a senior in high school, I was at some house party. There was this chick named Rachel there, a notoriously crazy bee who was known for causing trouble anywhere she went. She was also a pretty big girl, maybe 5'9", broad shoulders. Anyway, out of nowhere she just starts screaming at another girl, Sarah, a shorter, skinny thing, who was seriously on the other side of the room doing absolutely nothing. Rachel gets up in her face, starts cursing her out, pushing her multiple times, obviously just trying to start crap for the heck of it. Rachel finally decides to throw a punch, and I crap you not, like a flash of light, Sarah just launches at Rachel, starts beating the living crap out of her face, knocks her on her butt and strongholds Rachel's hair and starts slamming her skull on the brick fireplace in the house. I think she must have knocked Rachel out for a minute, because Sarah decided she was done and just stood up and walked away. Turns out Sarah's older sister was a competitive female boxer, and showed her a thing or two about fighting. Definitely the best girl fight I've ever seen. There's this old miserly looking man with a nickel who seems to just ride the subway all day. The nickel man only seems to have one purpose in his life. He sticks his hand out with a nickel on his palm, and he just points it at you. It's like he's asking you to look at his plain old nickel. He's like a reverse panhandler. One night, I was coming home drunk and saw the nickel guy. He was doing his usual rounds, and he came to me. He stuck out his hand, and like usual you just let him be. But I was tipsy and I pulled the nickel out of his hand. Within seconds, he went from normal nickel guy to freaking crazy rip your face off yelling angry gorilla man. Till I put it back, and he became normal nickel guy again. I was mortified. I live in front of a hospital parking lot. Some guy in an expensive car cut in line. A lady in a van was super peed off and kept honking. He got out to calm her down. She got out, ripped off her wig and started screaming and pointing at the cancer center entrance. He looked like he wet himself and got back in his car. Still stayed where he cut in line though. My father and his brother, who are both 6 feet 6 inches, were riding in my uncle's tiny little Chevette and a guy road raged and chased them into a parking lot. You could almost see the guy fill his pants when they unfolded themselves out of the car. 2 drunk guys were bugging this local busker, trying to get him to fight them, saying all sorts of racist stuff. The busker was black. The busker just lost it. Obviously he had to deal with a ton of drunk buttholes, He picked up his guitar and hit one of the drunk guys across the face with it. I called the police when I saw it, and later got called in to give evidence against the drunk guys, who got arrested, saying that they started it. Was covering a hockey game as a sports reporter when I saw the single best retaliation of my life. In my state, if you're female and you want to play hockey with the boys, you can. Typically, the serious girl hockey players will play in these leagues because the girls only hockey leagues are crap. There was this girl named Alex who I covered since she was a freshman and she was really good. Played since she was a kid, was on some really good travel teams, competed in national camps, got a college scholarship for the sports and played 4 years in college, etc. Anyway, her junior year, I'm covering an away game at this crappy arena and her school is playing one of its rivals, so I know it's going to be a chippy game. It did not disappoint. This big tough boy notices she's a girl, or played against her before, and spends the first 2 periods basically trying to intimidate her by checking her hard into the boards whenever she has the puck and generally doing all the things you know someone is doing to antagonize you. Now, I've seen this girl play and I know she isn't going to tolerate that, so I just wait for the moment she snaps. It comes in the 3rd period. Butthole comes running full speed from one side of the ice to the other and gives her one of the worst cheap shot checks I've ever seen. She hits the boards hard, lands on the ice and the crowd yells because the refs either didn't see it or didn't care and the play breaks the other way so everyone else is moving away from them. She doesn't miss a beat though. Calmly, I watch her pick herself up and butthole hockey player must have said something to cause her to snap because she takes her helmet off and goes his way. At this point, I can tell her thinks he's going to dismiss this sweet little girl and tell her to play with dolls or something, but he never gets the chance. She cold cocks him right in the jaw and starts beating the pee out of him. It was absolutely amazing. He must have had maybe 50 pounds on her, but she didn't care and she beat his butt handily. And because the refs were on the other side of the ice, it took a little bit of time to break them up. She got ejected. He got ejected, but he sulked out of the arena knowing full well he got his butt kicked by a girl. It was phenomenal. 2 kids, about 11 years old, were bullying this 9-year-old kid by instigating their little sister to go hit and kick him, with the threat that they would beat him with a hockey stick if he retaliated. The poor 9-year-old pleaded with them to stop, but when they wouldn't, he charged the kid with the hockey stick, took it from him, chased them off, threw the stick over the fence and continued to saunter home. I witnessed this from about 50 feet away at age 13. It took place in about a minute, and while I was contemplating a way to help the kid out, he just took matters into his own hands like a G. That little kid was not the one to frick with. When I was about 10 or so, I shot a cricket with a Nerf gun from a prone position and it dodged it, then jumped at me, and I got up in panic so fast. The gun flung from my hand into the kitchen, breaking a few glasses. Never fricked with crickets again. I was working in a sketchy part of Albuquerque when I realized a guy was following me through the parking lot. Started walking faster, so did he. I knew I wasn't going to get into my car before he reached me, so I took the knife out of my purse and turned around and shoved it in his face and yelled, "I am from Wisconsin, I can gut a deer." Dude took off and I got in my car shaking. "I don't know you, that's my purse." I lost it at a Subway a while back. This story isn't about me losing it at a person myself, but I found someone who could and did. The Subway I go to is inside a skating rink, and on this day it was flooded with newly pubescent boys thinking that treating people like absolute horseshit is how you act like a macho man. One girl behind the counter was near tears, and the other woman was trying to hold her own ground against a bunch of 13-year-olds. It was you freaking B. I didn't freaking ask for mayo. Are you blind? For frick's sake. That's not toasted enough. When I get a job, I'm gonna be making more than you. Just a taste of some of what I heard. So I went out to the lobby of the skating rink, found a woman nearby and asked her if she was with the boys in Subway, which she was, and then I told her to follow me. The look on the boys' faces when she let out her angered screech after listening to them was friggin' priceless. She made the boys pay for their own food. One boy didn't get to finish making his sandwich. Wrap it up how it is and he'll pay for it. And from what I gathered, as she practically dragged them out of there with the boys who weren't hers, she was going to speak to their parents, followed by strong protests as she told them to pack their crap. As she was taking them home early, I left the girls at Subway a nice tip, and they gave me a cookie. Never frick with an angry mom. Mom anger is my favorite kind of karmic retribution. After drinking and partying in the hotch outside our base in Japan, my friend and I went to the on-base taxi stand to go back to the barracks. We hail and start climbing into the first open cab we see. This drunken white guy was running for it, but we beat him to it. We didn't see him. Anyway, he's furious and starts yelling at us. 2 girls, 1 Latina, the other black. You stupid fricking N. And then a group of about 6 black sailors come around the corner to the stand. I don't know how it happened. Maybe Paul Mooney summoned them. Anyway, white guy changes his mind and ends up running, to the ships. A fight didn't break out though. This crazy guy frequented the convenience store where I used to work. He would come in and put $2 worth of fuel in his car 3 or 4 times a day because the NS steal my gas. He'd say, if there was a black person in the store, he'd yell and swear at them, call them names, and tell them to stop following him. Well, one day he started on this short, skinny guy, who ignored him at first. Crazy guy keeps on and skinny guy finally smirks and says something like, "Are you talking to me, brother?" At which point crazy guy, who I should add was also a large guy, turns around and pushes the guy. The little guy then proceeded to knock the crazy guy on his butt, drag him outside and beat the living crap out of him before the cops came. I work at a restaurant and 4 punks decided to dine and ditch. They ran out and got away, but luckily I overheard one of their names while they were eating. Long story short, I tracked him down on Twitter and the direct messages went like this. Me. Haha. Nice try. We know who you are. You owe $40. Bring the money or we are reporting you to the police and your school. Insert HS name. You have until Sunday night. 1 minute later. Punk. I'm terribly sorry for this horrible incident. Punk. I'm bringing the money right now. Punk. I'm terribly sorry, it wasn't even my idea. I had no choice but to run also or else I'm in trouble. Punk. We left a bag of money. 15 minutes after I sent the message, a guy literally opened the front door and threw a Ziploc bag full of $40 of cash and change into the restaurant and ran away. Idiots. I work in a law office and regularly have to go file documents with the court. I have learned, from watching one interaction, not to frick with the clerks at the filing window. A lot of people probably wouldn't believe how detailed the rules are for submitting documents to the court. There are rules regarding the type of paper you can use, the exact spacing of the heading on the paper, the exact measurements of the 2 hole punches at the top of the paper, etc. There are literally dozens of rules on how to format your filings. In my experience, these rules are rarely enforced. The clerks will reject documents if there are major errors, missing signatures, incorrectly filled out, etc. They will usually let things slide like your 2 hole punches not being precisely 3/4 inches apart. But there was one day where I saw clerk take sweet revenge against someone who totally had it coming. I was standing in line, waiting to file something, and a notoriously huge prick of an attorney got called up to the window. The clerk asked him something like, "I'm really sorry, Mr. Notoriously huge prick, but you're missing some attachment to this form." He reacted as if she had just stood from her chair, flipped him the bird, and went to crap on his mother's grave. He starts yelling about how she didn't know what the frick she was doing. A trained ape could do her job. He would be complaining to her supervisor, and on and on. He goes stomping away, and she looks much calmer than you would expect for someone who just got dreamed out by this enormous douchebag. I get called up to her window and say something like, "I am so sorry you had to deal with that." She replies, "It's fine. He's on my list now." I'm curious, so I ask what she means. Her response was fantastic. She says, "Mr. Notoriously Huge Prick handles a lot of family law cases. He'll be wanting to file things here, and his paperwork is bound to land on my desk. For people like him, I get out the formatting sections of the rules of court, and I make sure he's followed every one of them." She points to my filing and says, "Your 2 hole punches look off. You see how one is higher than the other? They are supposed to be a certain distance from the top of the page. I'm not going to reject yours, but next time he drops something off at the filing box, you better believe I'm going to bust out my ruler." I say how awesome that is, but once he sees a reason his document was rejected, he'll just have an assistant fix it or whatever. She replies we don't have to tell him why it was rejected specifically, just that it violated some rule of formatting. He can figure that out for himself if he ever wants to have another document filed. She looked so happy. In high school between classes, a couple of the defensive backs on our football team thought it would be funny to run full speed into the open doors to knock over the students that were leaving the classrooms. After seeing this happen a few days in a row, the football team's starting defensive tackle, decided to post up behind the door. After I felt the thump of my fellow teammate hit the door, I emerged from behind the door to find him laying on the ground. I reached out a hand and helped him to his feet. Then I told him, hey man, you gotta watch where you're going. There's a door there. I watched a guy try to steal a girl's purse. He ran past her, grabbed onto the strap, and tried to yank it off her arm. She was a lot stronger than he'd anticipated, because she pulled the bag back and sent him sprawling onto the sidewalk. She then kicked the crap out of him, screaming at him the whole time. As this took place in Montreal, people just watched her beat him up and clapped politely when she was done. She curtsied to the crowd, spat on him, and walked off. Having spent a fair amount of time in Montreal, I can absolutely picture this happening and no one being surprised. Don't frick with crazy French Canadians. French people yelling in French is cute. Canadians yelling in French is terrifying. The one and only time I have had a massive win over someone falls into this category. I was once engaged to the Vice Consul of America from Brazil. I was flying around on holiday and coming back to America where we were living. I was on a working visa, but had recently quit my job as we were about to move. She was being reposted and so I decided to go on holiday for a few weeks, and had come in and out of the US several times. After being in a plane returning from Spain, I was dressed in an old pair of shorts, t-shirt, odd socks and hadn't slept. I looked and felt like crap. The SAR guy immediately flags me over and starts grilling me over my visa, travel history, etc. He picked up that I had resigned from my job and formed the opinion that I was trying to sneak back into the States, even though as an Australian passport holder I can come into and out of the States pretty much at will. He made me miss my plane and took me into one of the little rooms. With the world's biggest crap-eating grin, he told me I was not going to be allowed back into the States. I tried to reason with him, explaining all my housing stuff, bank accounts etc were there, and that all my paperwork was in order etc, but he was a complete bastard and was having none of it. So I casually dropped my fiancee's name and her position. He got a little worried. He asked me for some details about her, which I gave. He walked out of the room, his crap-eating grin definitely gone. He came back with a folder of photos and asked me to pick her out, as they keep on file photos of diplomatic personnel etc. When I passed all his tests he turned white. For once in my life I had the power over this little crap bird, and it would not have been a hard thing to place a call to my girlfriend and have this prick's job, and he knew it. All my documentation was in order and he was just being a first class C. Managers were called, apologies were made, tickets to the first class waiting lounge were arranged, and new flights were booked free of charge. My one and only time in this world where some dude looked at me and realized that they had just majorly fricked up. You have been visited by the ingenious Joe. Comment brain so you always see the glass half full. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.